Let us be in prayer together. God of love, God of so many directions, be with us this morning. And may the meditations of our hearts and the words of my mouth be acceptable to you. Amen. There is a famous Puerto Rican saying that says, ojos que no ven, corazón que no siente. Eyes that do not see, heart that does not feel. And it's a saying that is intended to protect the feelings of the one who is saying it. It is an expression to avoid conflict, to avoid difficult situations, to avoid reality. It's an expression that allows us to enter into that very comfortable place that we call denial. And so when we say, ojos que no ven, corazón que no siente, the eyes that do not see, heart that does not feel, is we do not want to deal with that. We do not want to see that. We are not in a place where we could be in a space that would allow us to feel vulnerable or experience pain. And while that may not be a saying that we say here in the U.S., don't we sometimes feel that we want to say, ojos que no ven, corazón que no siente? Because it's too much. It's too much what we have been asked to endure and to witness this day and age. But there is great importance in seeing, and sometimes seeing is more than just the act of witnessing. Seeing is abiding. Seeing is being in relationship. Seeing is the ability to just be. When we allowed ourselves to see, we allowed ourselves to be. And I think that in this day and age, we have a lot of freedom in what we can and cannot see. I remember one of my friends a few years ago, she broke up with her boyfriend. And so I noticed that she detached herself from every social media platform. And when I said, what's happening, because I live here and she lives elsewhere, I haven't been able to, I think that you're off my friends list. And she said, well, I just closed all of my accounts because ojos que no ven, corazón que no siente, right? Eyes that do not see, heart that does not feel. And in the gospel lesson this morning, the requests of the Greeks is very simple. They say, we wish to see Jesus. And I invite us this morning to say that out loud. We wish to see Jesus. Let's say it one more time. We wish to see Jesus. How did that feel to you? It's not something that you request every day. You don't call the church office and say, Pastor Damaris, I wish to see Jesus. Right? This is not something that we put in an email to a friend. We wish to see Jesus. And this request, however unusual, it is imperative for our time, a time where we demand sight often, but we are selective of what we want to see. And when we say, ojos que no ven, corazón que no sienten, or you say whatever it is that we say here in the United States to reflect that, it's because we're choosing, we're making a choice not to see. But there are also times when we demand to see, but not to abide or to be in relationship, but rather to judge, to justify our own self-righteousness so that we do not have to take time to learn, to know, or understand the other. I remember years ago, and maybe I've shared this story with you, I was in high school in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and someone wrote an article about Puerto Ricans. And they said that Puerto Ricans, they killed the chickens in the bathtub, And they do all these things. And at the time, we lived in an apartment, right? So I didn't have a house, you know. And I was asking my grandmother, do we kill chickens in our bathtub? Right? And so what the person was trying to make was the point that while everybody was saying that, you know, minorities will be the majority in a certain amount of years and that Latinos will be the majority in 2030 and all of that, this person was saying, well, no, because these people kill their chickens in their bathtubs. And all they saw of us was that thing they did not like. And I'm not sure if they witnessed anyone killing a chicken in a bathtub, but certainly my family didn't. So that did not, what they were seeing in us was not true for my family. So we demand to see, but not to abide, not to be in relationship. And we need, at this day and age, to have that yearning that the Greeks had to wish to see Jesus. And the challenge that we have about seeing Jesus is that often Jesus, when we see Jesus in the space, he just doesn't meet our expectations. We expect to see Jesus in a different way. And then often God manifests God's self in a way that is just not how we want it. In a way that challenges us and pushes us and stretches us. So we're like, was that God? I'm in reflection, right? So, but the prophet Jeremiah tells us something a little bit deeper. God will put God's law within them, he writes, and I will write on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. So now it's not an external manifestation, but it's an internal manifestation of God. And if that is the case, if God's laws are written in the hearts of God's people, when the world says, we wish to see Jesus, will they see Jesus in us? Will they see Jesus in the church? Walter Brueggemann writes an amazing statement on these matters. And he reminds us that the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 586 BCE is a defining historical event in the literature of the Old Testament. And Brueggemann suggests that that event deployed a theological crisis as it relates to the confidence in the ideology of chosenness held by the Jerusalem establishment, a theological crisis as it relates to the denial amid the crisis that ideology had failed and was not sustainable, and despair when the denial was broken and reality was faced. And then he further suggests that in this time, in the United States of America, 9/11 was that defining moment that similarly produced the same dislocation in our society as did the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BCE. And in addition, he says, to the loss that we experienced in 9/11, this was a very important turn in societal ideology. Our ideological crisis, he presents, can be traced in how our confidence in the ideology of exceptionalism has been challenged. He says this crisis brings forefront the denial that ideology has failed and is not sustainable, and despair once the denial is broken and reality is faced. And Brueggemann further suggests that there are three prophetic tasks with which we, the Church of Jesus Christ, are faced today. So, in summary, he's saying we are being challenged to acknowledge that the ideology that we are exceptional is not real. We are being challenged that we recognize the denial amid the crisis of that of that experience, and then to recognize our despair because we're moving towards that reality, that we have to recognize that we're not exceptional. It's simple. But then he suggests, and he calls the church to 3 prophetic tasks. One of them is that we articulate reality amid ideology. That we really call it like it is, for lack of better terms. He suggests that we are called as those who have God's laws written in our hearts to denounce an ideology of exceptionalism that continues to perpetuate racism, sexism, and otherness. If we call that element into being in the real world, we would see that exceptionalism creates otherness. We don't fit a certain criteria. I think I've told you this before. I've lived in New England for over 30 years. I never was qualified to call myself a New Englander. I just never met all the boxes. There is certain criteria, and I just didn't meet them all after 30 years. I'm hoping that New York treats me a little bit different. Maybe in 10 years, you would allow me to call myself a New Yorker. I'm not sure. What do you think? My staff told me 10 years, that's the minimum. And I'm saying, well, I thought that maybe after a year, when I learned how to ride the train effectively, I can say, I'm a New Yorker. Let's see what happens. Our prophetic task calls us to articulate grief amid our denial. What does those words mean? Ojos que no ven, corazón que no sienten. That means I do not want to acknowledge my grief. I don't want to acknowledge my pain. We run away from pain. How many times we said, I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. We medicate our pain and we numb our senses. When the pain is too much, we take medication. When we're too excited, we take medication to calm our excitement. If we're down, we take uppers, and if we're up, we take downers. Isn't that the reality of our society? But at a time where our moral compass has often gone unexamined, we are called to prophetic grief. And prophetic grief, in the words of Reverend Addis Moss Jr., is more than crying and sighing. It's more than weeping and mourning. Prophetic grief is planting gardens of healing in the midst of raindrops of blood. Prophetic grief is declaring to the world that love is stronger than hate, he says, that God's grace is greater than our grief, that God's power is greater than our pain. God is calling us to prophetic grief. Prophetic grief is accompanied by action. On Wednesday, this nation witnessed prophetic grief. This nation witnessed prophetic grief when thousands of students walked out of their schools to call for the end of gun violence. That, my friends, is prophetic grief. Prophetic grief is when we don't sit around and complain about how things are not the way we like them to be, but that we take our pain so it can propel us forward to act for justice and peace. We are being called to prophetic grief. We are being called to prophetic grief not yesterday, not tomorrow. We are being called to prophetic grief today. And it's up to us if we can look inside of us and find the laws that God has written in our hearts, and then we can launch ourselves forward in prophetic grief. That action is up to us. Prophetic grief dismantles the ideology that leads us to confront the pain and then propels us to act. And finally, our third prophetic task is to have the courage to articulate hope amid despair. Just like Israel lamented not enjoying the privilege of their perceived chosenness, We in America, we're suffering from our concept of exceptionalism being dismantled in front of our very eyes. You know, Lamentations 3:17 to 18 says, "My soul is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is, so I say, gone is my glory and all that I have hoped for from God." And when I read those words, I can almost feel a segment of America. A segment of America just saying, gone is my glory and all that I had hoped for from God. In the midst of our nation's despair, our prophetic task is to articulate this hope with love. Hope in the new covenant of love, justice, and peace. Hope in our commitment to see Jesus in others and allow them to see Jesus in us. My beloved congregation, the hour has come. The hour has come when the church's message needs to be followed by actions. The hour has come when we take and we own our 3 prophetic tasks. The hour has come when our grief brings forth justice. And maybe our first task, before we take on the mantle of our 3 prophetic tasks, is to recognize that we are God's people, that we wish to see Jesus, and that there is a world that wishes to see Jesus as well. The Greeks in the gospel lesson symbolize that world. And the world is asking us today, is asking Fort Washington Collegiate Church this morning, I wish to see Jesus. I wish to see Jesus. Will I see Jesus in you? Amen.